Wake up, sleepyhead. It's time to wake up and live. This is Worship in the Gap with Jim McKenzie, interim minister of First Congregational Church in Port Washington, Wisconsin. I'm glad you've joined us. I know that those of you who'll be waking up looking for a worship experience online, something relative to our church. So it's Thursday and I'm kicking around in my blue jeans at home thinking about Sunday. Thinking about you and what we're going through with this coronavirus. It's an interesting time. I feel like we're caught up in this great whirlwind. We're being cast about, twisted, turned inside out, upside down, and we really don't know where we're going to land. That's disconcerting, to say the least. We hope that there's medication on the horizon, things that would alleviate the suffering and death of those who are struggling with coronavirus. We hope that the timeline is not too long, but I think deep in our hearts, we know that it's going to be a lot longer than we had hoped. So we want to maintain contact with you. As you know, those of you who've been checking in on our videos, once a week, for you on Sunday mornings, we have a Worship in the Gap. Throughout the week, we hope to have one or two other Gap chats with you about different topics going on in the church or different theological or spiritual matters. So, I hope you're keeping your church and all the churches in your prayers today. It is the first time, really, that we have not been able to gather together to sing our hymns, to pray our prayers, and to join in growing in God. So we hope that this will be an important time for you. I'd like to begin by reading you a passage. I'll be honest with you, it's a rather long passage. It's from the Gospel of John. You'll remember that John is the fourth Gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in the 11th chapter, there's a story, one that you may well be familiar with, although it's probably not the number one story you know about. But I'm guessing that it will ring familiar to you. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So it was Lazarus, Mary, and Martha that were siblings. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to Jesus, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness is not unto death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by means of it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go into Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were but now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. Thus he spoke. And then he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awake him out of the sleep. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go and see him. Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us go also, that we may die with him. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary sat in the house. Mary said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, he who was coming into the world. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying quietly, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Then Mary, when she came where Jesus was and saw him, fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him? But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. I knew that thou hearest me always, but I have said this on account of the people standing by, that they may believe that thou didst send me. When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The dead man came out, his hands and his feet bound with bandages, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, Untie him and let him go. Pretty remarkable story. I guess I was in 4th grade at Southside Elementary School in Champaign, Illinois. In those days, my teacher was named Mrs. Nichols. Some days I would walk into the classroom and I would start to get excited because I would see that the shades were drawn and there was a 16-millimeter projector set up in the middle of the room with one of those big pull-down screens. I was excited because I knew that we were going to watch a movie. And regardless of whatever the movie was about, if there was time, Mrs. Nichols would always run it in reverse for us, and it broke up the room. Things that had been destroyed were reconstituted. Buildings that had been demolished, brick by brick, were rebuilt. And people who had been knocked to the ground would rise up again. It was magic before our eyes. And even in 4th grade, even as a little boy in 4th grade, 10 years of age, I found myself wishing that life were like that. I wish that things could be reversed, that bad, sorrowful things could be undone, that my friends that had been injured and died would be well again. I think even today that I find myself in part wishing that we could undo this coronavirus. If we could only turn back the hands of time and maybe return to, say, a month ago. Wouldn't that be a great world? The stock market back at all-time highs, people going about their lives without worry and anxiety, this great invisible evil pandemic that sweeps the face of the earth and threatens to be a scourge. Why, it could all be reconstituted and life could be good again. Don't we wish that life were like that? I'm not sure that that's what this story is about with Lazarus. We see something critically important here in terms of how God works in the midst of challenge, tragedy, and sorrow. Maybe that one verse, maybe you heard it. John 11:35. Remember it? The shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. When our hearts are broken, I believe the heart of God is broken. Like a parent whose child learning to ride a bicycle falls and skins her knee, and the parent rushes over and picks her up, sees a little blood on the scar and decides we need to put a Band-Aid on that. The parent holds the child and tends to the need, but the wound is still there. It still hurts. Life doesn't feel fair. And same with a coronavirus, affecting all kinds of innocent people who, of no fault of their own, have fallen sick and some have died. And imagine, even today, as the numbers continue to escalate, and we're well over 1,000 deaths in this country from this virus. Even now, you can imagine the number of families who face the enormous challenge of life without a loved one. Jesus wept. Jesus cared for this friend, and he cared for his sisters. They said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, this might not have happened." Maybe. But bad things happen to good people all the time. What's remarkable to me at the end of this story is that when he yells, "Lazarus, come out!" and the stone is rolled away and Lazarus pops out, wiping his eyes, getting adjusted to the daylight. Jesus says to his family and friends standing nearby, "Untie him and let him go. Unwrap him and set him free." Why did he do that? Couldn't he have done that on his own? Had Lazarus pop out of the tomb and be fine and ready to go? I like to think, and maybe I'm overreading this, but I like to think that Jesus was saying, we need to work together on these things. Friends, help him. Take the wrappings off his head and around his arms and legs. Untie him and set him free. Maybe you've been in those times in your life. If you haven't, you will be, like I have. Times in life when, well, to put it bluntly, you've just been devastated. Life has turned upside down. Your heart is broken. You can't see any way to tomorrow. And Jesus says, untie him. Set him free. And friends come by and sit with you, talk with you, put their arms around you and say, I'll be here today, tomorrow, and the next day. And God's love is known. God's love is known in real, concrete ways. I like to think that that's why Jesus engaged the help of Lazarus' friends and family. Did he need them to do that? I don't know. But he did it. And I think he did it in order to send us an important message. We are the hands and feet of God. We are God's heart beating in rhythm with this world that needs the touch of a holy hand. And you can be that for your friends, your family, people around this nation today as we face the emotional and physical trials of this great pandemic. Jesus wept. Jesus still weeps for this world and calls for us to be his love to everyone. I'd like to close in prayer. I've got a prayer here that I've written, and I'd like to just share it with you. If you would, please pray with me. Loving God, you have set before us exciting opportunities to live in the reality of the new covenant. May we learn to live as children of promise, free from the anxieties and worries for what tomorrow brings, and secure in the hope that you are present with us today, sustaining us in what we need and encouraging us in our attempts to care for others whose needs will be provided by our hands. Teach us that life is found in giving and not in the futile attempts to hoard for ourselves. May we begin to see that our world community reaches beyond our own shores and that our light shines brightest when it is directed outward. Fill us with love and compassion. Turn our eyes toward you, and may we always seek to do your will. We ask this in the name of the one who teaches us also to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. This is Jim McKenzie, interim minister at First Congregational Church in Port Washington, Wisconsin. Be wise, be smart, be safe, and may God bless you, and may God bless First Congregational Church.